and welcome to the very first episode of my F1 podcast, Travel Trackside, with your host, Nafia. Before I begin, I want to give a brief introduction to Travel Trackside, how I thought of the name, how I created it, and a bit about myself if you don't know who I am. My name is Nafia. I'm 19. I've been to 4 races: Abu Dhabi 2022, Monza 2023, Abu Dhabi 2024, and Bahrain 2025. I think the best race that I've been to was Bahrain, and that is just because I met Kimi Antonelli. I met a few of the other drivers from afar. It was my birthday weekend and my birthday on Sunday, and McLaren came first. Oscar obviously winning there, and I don't know, it was super surreal. I had the most amazing time. The concerts were on top, and I don't even have words. You can see I'm stuttering. So I came up with Travel Trackside because I have a deep passion for traveling. I travel all the time, and if you ask anybody I know, they will tell you I cannot stay for a few months in my country at a time. I have to be away. I have to be out of my country. That is where I'm the happiest. I feel like being away from your home is where you try new things, where you become a different version of yourself, which is so much better than being at home stuck in the same routine, etc. And Trackside obviously relating to F1, so I thought I would take my 2 favorite things, traveling and Formula 1, and put them together. Whether you're a die-hard racing fan or just curious about what Formula 1 is all about, this episode is the perfect place to start. Today we're going to be diving into the history of Formula 1, how the race weekends actually work, and the basic rules, including the point systems and deciding on the World Championship. Okay, a brief history on Formula 1. Let's start where it all began. Formula 1 has been one of the richest histories in all of sport, and it roots back to over 70 years ago, but really it began in the 1900s. Back then, manufacturers would test their speeds and durability by racing each other on public roads and events like the Monaco Grand Prix, which is very exciting because that's what we're watching today. Who's going to win?
Of course you knew Lando was going to win.
So that started in 1929 and helped shape the future of motor racing. So after World War II, there was a push to create a set of rules for single-seater racing, and now that's how the FIA, or Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, came up with what we call Formula 1. Formula refers to the set of rules all cars and drivers have to follow, and 1 marks it as the highest, most elite category in motorsports. That's why there's Formula 2, Formula 3, Formula 4, which I will also be talking about later. The first ever official Formula 1 championship race was held on May 13th, 1950 at Silverstone in the United Kingdom. This race had 22 drivers, and the championship itself consisted of just 7 races across Europe. The first championship, an Italian driver named Giuseppe Farina, driving for Alfa Romeo. From there, the start just kept growing. In the 1950s and 60s, legendary teams like Ferrari and Lotus dominated, and drivers like Juan Manuel Fangio became global stars, but the cars were dangerously fast and safety was becoming non-existent. Unfortunately, fatal crashes were far too common in those early years. In the 1970s, safety started becoming a priority after high-profile deaths like Jim Clark and Roshan Trent. This era also brought in more sponsorships, better TV coverage, and increased professionalism. Teams like McLaren and Williams became powerhouses, and drivers like Niki Lauda, James Hunt, and Mario Andretti helped make the sport iconic. In the 1980s and 90s, the sport was revolutionized with turbocharged engines, cutting-edge electronics, and intense rivalries. Ayrton Senna versus Alain Prost is one of the most famous rivalries in the sport's history. Let me know if you want me to go in detail about that, because I can and make a whole different episode for that. And by the 2000s, we entered the era of Michael Schumacher and Ferrari dominance. Schumacher won 5 titles in a row from 2000 to 2004. After that came the rise of our rookie Fernando Alonso, and then Sebastian Vettel, and eventually Lewis Hamilton, who dominated from 2014 onwards until 2020, when F1 introduced hybrid engines. His rivalry with Nico Rosberg and then with Max Verstappen shaped the 2010s and 2020s. Fast forward to today, Formula One is a global sport with 24 races on 5 continents. Teams spend hundreds of millions on car development. Drivers' fitness, mental strength, and teamwork are just as important as cars' performance. It's no longer just a European sport, and it's watched by millions of fans around the world. Me, you, your mom, from the US and the Middle East to Asia, South America, and Africa. Structure of the F1 race weekend. Now that we know where Formula One came from, let's break it down how a typical race weekend works. So if you've ever turned into an F1 event and were confused by all the different sessions, practice, qualifying, then the race, don't worry, you're not alone. Let's simplify it. F1 race weekend is usually 3 days long. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But if you count media days, that's a Thursday. So on Fridays, we start with practice. There are 2 practice sessions. Free practice 1, also called FP1, and then free practice 2, called FP2. Each one lasts an hour, and the goal is not to set the fastest time, but for the teams and drivers to gather as much data as possible. They test the tire wear, fuel loads, engine performance, and figure out which car setup works best for the specific track and for the drivers. Every racetrack is different, so what worked in Spain might not work in Canada, or what worked on a wet track might not work on a dry track. Then we move on to Saturday. First, there's one more practice session in the morning, FP3. That is their last chance to fine-tune in the car before the competitive stuff starts, qualifying. So qualifying is one of the most exciting parts of the weekend and arguably the most important. All 20 drivers go on track fighting by their time. So the 5 slowest drivers get knocked out. So that's 15 to 20 out. Then you have Q2. The remaining 15 drivers go again, competing for the best time. 5 are eliminated, 10 up, go into Q3. Q3, you have your top 10 drivers that go head to head, and this is where they fight for pole position. So whichever driver comes first starts the Sunday's race. That being said, we move on to Sunday, race day, the main event of Formula One. This is when drivers compete for championship points. Races usually last about 90 minutes to 2 hours, and the total distance obviously depends on the track that they're racing at. But recently, they've added a new thing called Sprint Weekend. So that's at selected races, and these weekends are a bit different, but also kind of the same. There you have Friday as practice 1 and qualifying. So instead of 3 practices, you only have 1, and qualifying on the Friday. Then Saturday, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I got it a bit mixed up. But you have your qualifying for the normal race, and then the sprint race, which they qualified on Friday for. Sprint qualifying and sprint race is just a mini race in a big race weekend. And then you have Sunday, your full-length Grand Prix like usual. Nothing's changed there. Sprint races award fewer points, but they add more action to the weekend and shake up the grid. And sometimes if one driver wins the sprint and they think they're doing really well, the race results don't show that. Like, there was an instance where Lewis Hamilton won the sprint race and he actually did really badly in the actual race. There are a lot of rules, a lot of points that you have to check on the FIA website, Formula One, and that is too much work to do for a beginner. So I'm going to break it down for you. Each team has 2 drivers, and there are 10 teams. So 20 drivers on the track at any given race. Whether a driver is sick, he will be substituted and replaced by a reserve driver. Teams compete for 2 titles, the Constructors' Championships and the Drivers' Championships. So the team earns points based on both drivers' results, and those go towards the Constructors' title. So that means these points are for the team as a whole. Like in 2024, last year, McLaren won the Constructors' title. Lando obviously coming in first in Abu Dhabi, and he secured that title. Meanwhile, individual drivers earn points for themselves in the fight for the Drivers' World Championship. Currently, Oscar is leading, Lando second, and Max third. And I could not be more happy because McLaren is just on top. Okay, if you couldn't tell, McLaren is my favorite team. Okay, so the point system is pretty straightforward. You have your top 10 drivers, and only those 10 get points. If you're not within the top 10, you don't get points. So for first place, it's 25, second is 18, third 15, fourth 12, fifth 10, and then 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th positions, you get 8, 6, 4, 2, and 1 points. I'll put a list here. There also used to be a bonus. There also used to be a bonus point for the fastest lap, but only if the driver finishes in the top 10. But as of 2025, that rule no longer applies. In sprint races, the top 8 drivers score points, starting with 8 for first and going down to 1 point for 8th driver. Now, during the race, drivers are required to make at least 1 pit stop if the conditions are dry, and they must use at least 2 different tire compounds. So tires come in soft, medium, and hard. Soft is fastest, but it wears out really quickly, and hard is the most durable, but slower. Hard essentially take you further in the race, but if it rains, teams switch to intermediate or full wet tires, obviously depending on the wet conditions, which are specifically designed to push water away and reduce hydroplaning. Like any sports, there are penalties. So if a driver speeds in the pit lane, causes a collision, or gains an advantage by going off track, then they can get time penalties ranging from however many seconds, 5, 10, 15. They get drive-through penalties, grid penalties, which could be for the race if something happened on qualifying, or if it's in the race, it goes on to the next race weekend. Then all those people in orange that are surround the track, they're actually not McLaren fans. Sadly, they are marshals. So marshals also use a system of colored flags to communicate with the drivers, ensuring their safety, what the drivers need to do, what they need to slow down for, etc. So I'm going to give you a rundown of what these colored flags mean. Yellow flag means to slow down. There's a danger on track. Green flag means that all is clear. Red flag means the session has stopped. Blue flag tells the driver to let a faster car through. This often happens during qualifying when someone is doing an outlap and another driver is just driving, getting their tires warm, and the driver on the outlap needs to make up time, so the marshal will wave the flag, ensuring that they have a fair chance of getting their time. And this could also be if the driver does not move to the side, they could get a penalty for impeding or even slowing down the driver. Black and white flag is a warning for unsportsmanlike behavior. And of course, the checkered flag means the race is over. And in most races, probably all races, It is waved by someone famous, someone you've probably seen on TV, acting, singing, producing, etc. They normally always show who is waving the flag. At the end of the season, the driver and team with the most points win their respective titles. It's all about consistency, okay? You don't have to win every race, but scoring regularly is key to winning the championship. You just have to strategize with your team and your teammate properly if you guys are working towards the Constructors' Championship. And obviously, the driver has to work within themselves to see if they... Obviously, every driver wants to win a championship, so they have to know what they need to do, their limit, how they should push themselves, etc. And that's a wrap on the very first episode of your full beginner's guide to Formula One. We've covered the sport's legendary history, broken down the race weekend format, and explained all the essential rules and points. If you want me to go into more detail, I can make fewer TikToks, I can make another video. Just let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming topics that I'm going to be talking about. Let me know in the comments which F1 team you support or who you think is going to take the championship this year. McLaren. And thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. This is also just a side message to say that all the information I've done, thorough research, checked everything, but obviously sometimes I can make mistakes. If there's anything that I mispronounced or I did not give factual information, please let me know, as I do not want misinterpretations of what I'm trying to say. Thank you. Bye.